Now in Brussels for an emergency meeting with top world leaders at NATO. Moments ago, though, as you see on your screen, taking a photograph with other G7 members. It is his first trip to Europe since the war in Ukraine began 29 days ago.
Yeah, a whole month in, President Biden kicked off a day of high-stakes meetings earlier this morning in Brussels as world leaders plan a coordinated response to Russia's aggression here. Newsmax correspondent Alex Salvi live in Brussels. He has the latest for us. Alex.
Yeah, Sean, Emma, NATO headquarters was the first stop of the day for President Biden. As you said, now the meeting is underway with G7 leaders, but it's that NATO summit that should provide answers on military support being provided to Ukraine. At the very onset, Secretary General Stoltenberg sounding the alarms of an escalation by Russia, expressing his fears that Moscow could be preparing a pretext to use chemical weapons within Ukraine. Now, he declined to say if this would prompt a military response from the collective body and said, although it is prepared to defend every inch of NATO territory, it will not engage with Russia over Ukrainian skies.
A no-fly zone over Ukraine means that we need to impose it. And to impose a no-fly zone means that we need to massively attack Russian air defense systems in Russia, in Belarus, and in Ukraine, and also be ready to shoot down Russian planes. And then the risk for a full-fledged war between NATO and Russia will be very high, and that will cause more death and more destruction.
And shortly after those remarks, Ukrainian President Zelensky urged NATO to prove itself as the best defensive force in the world and reiterated his calls to implement a no-fly zone. But another component of today's meetings is coordinating sanctions against Russia and then condemning those who refuse to take punitive action.
We call on China to join the rest of the world in clearly condemning the Russian invasion of Ukraine and not provide political support and, of course, neither provide any kind of material support to the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
Now, just a moment ago, Stoltenberg reiterating those calls for China to condemn the current invasion of Ukraine, as well as taking aim at Belarus for facilitating the current invasion. But this is the first stop of the day for President Biden. Now he's underway with a meeting with G7 leaders and then the European Commission right here. So we should get a much more detailed strategy from Western allies and how they plan to respond to Russia's aggression against Ukraine.
All right. Yeah, a long day of that, I believe. And we should hear from President Biden later this afternoon as well. Alex Salvi there live in Brussels. Alex, thank you.
Joining us now to discuss is former State Department spokesperson Heather Nauert. Heather, thanks so much for coming on National Report today. A big day for President Biden. Good to see you, too. He's meeting with these international leaders. We do recall that President Biden did formally title Vladimir Putin as a war criminal. Will today's meeting and the additional sanctions and military equipment deter Vladimir Putin?
Well, I think, first of all, I think it's important that every nation, every party to NATO is speaking with the same voice. And it looks like we're all on the same page. I remember going to Brussels with Secretary Pompeo, and we would meet with our NATO members, our allies, and have conversations about some of their biggest concerns. And this is back in 2018, for example. And one of the things that they would say is that Russia was their top concern. So this was their very worry. Today, we are seeing this come to light with what Putin is doing in Ukraine. It seems that everyone is starting to speak with the same voice. I hope that they will be tougher on Russia. The United States and our partners need to give Ukraine the lethal aid that they are asking for. I know that a no-fly zone is controversial. I would take issue with Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg in saying that we will not do a no-fly zone. I think it's problematic. Anytime that you rule something out publicly, you want to keep your adversaries guessing. And the more that we talk about what we won't do, such as putting boots on the ground, the more it just encourages Vladimir Putin to go ahead and wreak havoc across Ukraine.
You know, we're also keeping a close eye on how China is responding to the war in Ukraine, and perhaps topics of China's view on the war will also be coming up during this NATO meeting here. How important and significant is China and their view of this conflict playing into
President Xi is a bad guy. I'm just going to say it. They're dishonest. They pump illegal drugs into our nation. They are involved in providing material to North Korea, for example. Even when we had the toughest sanctions in the world on the North Korean regime, they were still providing food, oil, all of that. So we can't trust that China will do what it says it is going to do, even if it does start to say they will cooperate. It's no surprise to me that China will not condemn Russia's actions. Look, China is the country that has millions of Uyghur minorities in basically concentration camps or work camps. Human rights is not a priority for China, and I don't think it ever will be.
The Washington Post came out with a report that there had been repeated attempts from U.S. leaders to get in contact with their Russian counterparts to have conversations about ending this war. And essentially, WAPA is reporting that those calls went unanswered. Heather, with your expertise and working in the State Department, is this common?
Sometimes that does happen. I mean, we tend to have pretty open line communications with a lot of governments. We have our ambassador, John Sullivan, who's been serving in Moscow for, 3 years now. He is, by the way, terrific and a terrific leader, but it is a tough environment to work in. We've had this tit for tat with Russia for many, many years. And when I say tit for tat, I mean a diplomatic tit for tat. We would kick out Russian spies that Russians called diplomats. We would close down their consulates in the United States because they were spying out of those consulates. So it's a very tense relationship all the time. Does not surprise me if they would not answer our calls, but I can't confirm if that took place or not. I'm just not aware of it.
Right. Again, that being reported by the Washington Post. A big question, Heather, is whether or not the Ukrainian forces will be able to hold off for much longer, right? This war has gone on perhaps longer than it was initially intended to or predicted to. When you watch these Ukrainian forces fight back, when you watch President Zelensky speak to his country, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, they have a ton of heart. And my heart goes out to the Ukrainian people and also the Ukrainian military. They've done a fantastic job against a much stronger and larger military. Anytime you're fighting for your own country, your heart is going to be in it. And the Ukrainians have had the opportunity to get prepared for this, sadly, for quite some time. There has been a hot war going on in the Donbass region of Ukraine for years and years. It was something when I was at the State Department, we talked about a lot, but didn't get a whole lot of attention here in the United States. I believe it was about 10,000 people had died over a period of time in this Donbass region itself. And so that has given Ukraine the opportunity to really hone their fighting skills. They've also had support in the past from the United States government, including javelins, which we provided during the Trump administration. That was considered controversial at the time. Thank goodness President Trump made that decision to do that. Otherwise, Ukraine may not be standing like it is today and fighting so hard. But of course, what worries any of us watching this is Russia's possible use of chemical, nuclear, or biological weapons on Ukraine. And I hope one of the things that comes out of this meeting is that NATO member countries all together will draw a very clear red line in the sand and stand up to that red line. It means that you have to actually follow through with your threats if you're willing to put those threats out there.
Again, that will likely come up during today's meeting. We'll hope to get some more details on it. Heather Nauert joining us on National Report. Thank you, Heather. We appreciate your time.
All right, Emma, thanks.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, where real news for real people.